why you love mobile home parks so much, and why it might be a good choice for someone that's going along this path is one of their first deals.
This is the only asset class, even behind what they would consider in today's market true affordable housing or Section 8, right? This is the only asset class spread across all commercial real estate. It's the only one that's been resilient and has stood above the rest of the major food groups within commercial real estate.
All right. Welcome to another episode of the Legacy Wealth Podcast, where we help accredited investors build their legacy by growing their monthly passive income through private investments. I'm your host, Pascal Wagner, and today we have an old friend and colleague, Brad Rymer, joining us from Washington, D.C. Welcome, Brad.
Hi. Thank you very much, Pascal, and good to see you again.
Yeah, man. So I'm going to give a little bit of background on Brad. He is the co-manager, CIO, and CFO at Haven Capital Ventures, a manufactured housing community investment firm headquartered in Bonita Springs, Florida. Their strategy is to purchase manufactured housing communities all across the United States that are cash flow producing from mom and pop operators, focusing on ways that they can improve cash flow and value. Since founding in November 2022, Haven Capital Ventures has raised more than $2.2 million with their second fund currently fundraising. And today, if you want to participate in any of their offerings, it requires a minimum check of $50K as a new investor. So I'm going to take a pause there from reading your bio and want to kind of just jump in to having you explain kind of more in detail, maybe with acquisition criteria. What does your fund do?
Sure. Effectively, in the past, over the past 16 funds that I've worked with previously, starting as far back as call it 2012, 2015, when I started really getting into this sector specifically, we focused and have always focused on this misunderstood asset class, which is mobile home communities. It's better known, I guess traditionally known as trailer parks. It's evolved from that to mobile home parks, but in today's day and age, when you're actually just like an apartment community, an apartment complex, right? Same thing is a mobile home community is a series of lots that pay rent, kind of like a two-dimensional apartment building, right? And I've pushed that from the beginning. Once I took over as CFO, the fifth largest series of funds in the country, fifth largest portfolio, containing about 280 properties at its max, over 320 properties over my term and 30,000 lots. I came to understand the transition between a mobile home park and a trailer park to what is considered a community. And Sam Zell, who, rest in peace, created this new transition, sort of Warren Buffett. A community itself is a series of lots with a same mindset that we're paying rent. We want nice features, just like any apartment. We want nice features as a residential neighborhood, and we want kind of the same mindset to rent within. But we turn. And what we typically try to do is purchase communities that are undervalued, mismanaged, or with mom and pops that are ready to retire. They don't want to pass these down to their children, or the children who have inherited it don't want to take care of it. They don't understand it, and they've appreciated and understood the cash flow over time, either being growing up into it, or the mom and pops have taken on and understood the cash flow, the gains from it. What we do is we go in and kind of boost and elevate and evolve these communities to modernization. Say, for example, you take over a community and right away you see that the expense ratios are very high for that size of community per lot. You can spot right away things like, I know that there's a leak in the utilities, or I know that there's certain elements that can be passed through, or the municipality or even the county needs to be you need to revise or amend all the taxation. So it's over all the communities I've seen over time, you can spot this right away.
You know what's? I think it's just funny. Also, from knowing you, is the CFO answer side of you comes out. I haven't heard someone talk about mobile home communities in that way, and
Yeah.
I think it's interesting the different lens that everyone has on it. So when I think about mobile home park communities, you're really thinking about it as a community, just like on a larger apartment complex. You're not thinking, hey, here's 10 lots or 30 lots, and that sounds good. You're looking for things that actually have community features or are of a certain size. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So, I mean, obviously, like the smaller communities, like I looked at one recently in Pine, Colorado. Colorado has a great mobile home community atmosphere. You obviously don't have to worry about the floods, right? Unless you're on a riverbed. But no matter what, in a mobile home community in Colorado, you're typically in the mountains or high arid desert. That has it's almost like a camping atmosphere where people live year round. It's not an RV park. It's just their residence. Look at Malibu, California. That's a lifestyle where like mobile home community sitting there in Malibu outside of Pepperdine University, they're charging $1,000 per lot. And people are like, yeah, I'm going to pay that. I mean, that's more than what, in some instances, what people would pay for apartments. But yeah, I mean, from my standpoint, I look at these communities and I see where we could provide residents with, and I have this coined statement that I've built over time, which is, it's a two-dimensional apartment building, which I mentioned earlier, but it's the only affordable housing option for anybody in today's market. And it's the most effective one. It's the cheapest one, but it's the only option, that affordable housing, where you can have a lawn too. I mean, you have a lawn and a sense of ownership. Try to find that in a Section 8 house with about 2 times the amount of lot rent, or go to an apartment building and where you're being charged $800 to $900, but you have a sense of lawn. Like everybody around you, your neighbors control your hallways. I mean, I'm sorry, but it still is the most effective way for affordable housing.
Okay, that's also a really fascinating take. So when I think about mobile home parks, I think of the benefits of, okay, it's one of the housing crisis, like you said, like it's a way for someone to maybe find a roof over their head without paying over $1,000 in rent.
Right.
But when I think about it, is do these people really think about having a home? Or I would have just imagined that, it's like, oh, this is just the place I'm living now. But I mean, now that you're talking about it, everyone, I imagine, would want a sense of belonging or home ownership.
Yeah, sense of belonging in neighborhood. I mean, typically what you want to do, because of leverage and financing, which is very restrictive, and HUD, Fannie and Freddie, and government agencies are pushing their way more and more towards this. I mean, the inertia was kicked off by Warren Buffett and Sam Zell. But I mean, people we typically want to own a community where the tenant owns the home. And one of the things I point out in the recent podcast and article is that, again, the tenant pays for the lot, right? There's a separate lot rental, and then the home that sits on top of it is a separate rental. That's the home charge. Typically, what investors in mobile home communities want is they want the tenant who owns the home, right? They full outright own the title and home, and all they do is pay us lot rent. And we supply and maintain and keep efficient the utilities that are supplied to the home. That's it. Now, in many instances, and how we're trying to boost the mobile home community sector is we're bringing in homes, and the tenants they rent the lot, and then we provide the home, and so there's a home rent as well. 2 different operations: home operations, community operations, right? And I did this in the recent pitch deck, and I don't know if you've had the opportunity, and we'll talk at the end about sending everybody to Haven Capital Ventures website. But one of the things I've strived to always do is it's very easy to describe mobile home communities in the easy cash flow and the bigger cash flow, right? And it's resilient, it's reliable, it's consistent. But
why?
Separating the business, what's that?
Why? Let's go into why.
Well, to the why. Okay, so think about your lot rent. Okay, we talked about tenants paying lot rent, and that's their only obligation. We'll forget about the homes for now. They have a lot rent and they have to pay for utilities. Okay, it's up to the landlord that has all these different lots across the community to upkeep and collect rent on just those lots. The average lot rent right now across the country, it was when I first got aboard in terms of mobile home communities, it was $325 a month. Now it's around 380 to almost 425, depending on what region you are in the country. So that's just paying for that lot. That rent goes to the community owner, which is the series of lots, and we provide the utilities unless the municipality around it is providing those utilities and bill back directly to that tenant. But the expense to income ratio is 40%. Max. Well, if you're keeping a really efficient community, it's down to 30%. So 70% of the effective gross income goes to the owner of the property. We're not even talking about
let's simplify. Let's simplify. You know, what
Sure.
I try to do is
I love that. It's hard to do sometimes.
Yeah. No, that's pretty much my job on this entire podcast. So effectively, what you're saying is that by focusing on just the lot and not having to maintain the home, you don't have to deal with all of these extra expenses or issues with that come along with home ownership. You're just making sure that, you know, they get their utilities and that they get to put their house on that very specific plan.
They're paying a lot rent. You want the tenant to own the home, and that's strictly it. So I came up with the phrase a long time ago about the two-dimensional apartment building, because the lot is the apartment. And as a tenant in an apartment building, all you're doing is you're paying your apartment rent and the utilities that you use. Same with the lot. Same with the utilities that you consume.
What are the other options that someone that is looking for a home to sleep in this demographic? What are the other options that they have? Camping, homelessness?
There's RV. So there's permanent and seasonal RV, right? Where I've thought about and devised and talked to apps like RV Easy, Outdoorsy, RV Share, all these different groups about concepts on how to modernize the RV side of it. You have the small home side, which is not as easy as it would seem to put a small home on a mobile home lot, because states have regulation. The actual mobile homes themselves are licensed as automobiles, not residences, right? So that's a whole different wormhole that we could jump into, right? But I mean, basically, at the end of the day, they could camp on there, but that's a campground. Tenants typically within mobile home communities want a neighborhood, a community atmosphere. They want to know who's next door to them. They want to mow their own lawn, right? And again, you don't mow your own lawn in an apartment building, but you can in a mobile home community. And you could park your car right next to your home. You could have a shed and have an additional charge for the shed provided by the community, or bring your own in as long as it's approved by the state and the city. So, I mean, truly, it is. It's a communal. It's almost like a master community mindset that's all rental.
I want to put this question of what makes this asset class safe to invest in or safer. But what I'd love to kind of dive back and just make sure we don't miss it is, so you started this Haven Capital Ventures firm recently. You've been in the industry for a while. Why make this transition, start a new firm? And what did you do before this? Like what's your long history in mobile home parks?
Yeah. So, I guess to kind of back into the original part. So I started off in commercial real estate. This will be my 28th year. I've been across the board, whether it be in retail, development with GSA, now here being in DC, but development with GSA.
GSA? What's GSA?
GSA, Government Services Agency.
Okay.
Yep. And so they're the ones that build the courthouses in Atlanta and stuff like that, right? But I transitioned and went and built luxury apartment buildings, one down in Lone Tree, Colorado. That was right before I left. So, I actually when I came across, I was approached by one of the gurus in the sector to be the CFO, and I actually tapped into the mobile home industry about around 2009, 2010. I came aboard in 2015 as the CFO of this portfolio, not realizing how big this sector is and how underserved it is. Again, I said the fifth largest portfolio in the country at the time, with the gurus who basically written the Bible around mobile home communities. You have Sam Zell, you have Warren Buffett that were sitting at the top, but they kind of are stealth bombers in all of this. They kind of stood behind and behind Berkshire, behind Clayton and all that, Clayton who manufactures the homes. But I started to learn about how consistent the cash flows can be. And when you apply the right methodology in terms of a very rudimentary style, you still are maximizing your cash flow, and it's very consistent. It's very reliable. Tenants don't leave for 8 to 9 years. They're consistent on their payments. Those that aren't, yes, they probably should be evicted, but every single community owner, mobile home community, mobile home park owner wants to work with their tenants because it costs so much to get a new tenant in there or bring in a new mobile home itself on top of the lot. So you're always working with the tenant. You're always maintaining a standard and a notion of community, and you get to know those tenants as well. But like I said at the beginning of the podcast, is the most efficient mobile home community operates at a 30% expense to income ratio. And think about apartments, which are 50% or less, or 50% or more, sorry. And think about commercial buildings like retail, the reason why they charge triple net, or office buildings, the reason why they have gross leases, all these things. Those expense to income ratios are much, much higher. So your profit margin, when it comes to the bottom line and get to the NOI, which is where valuations are made, right, it's so much higher. Could you even consistently look at and expect underwrite at 40% expense to income ratio for mobile home communities, and then create efficiencies, and typically it comes down to 33 to 35%. That means 65% falls to the bottom line. Then you take out debt service or any contributions or anything that it comes to other expenses, and you have your NOI. It's still very healthy.
So continue along. You worked for this largest firm, and then what made you transition?
So when we recapitalized with the previous company,
what does that mean?
I had put, what's that?
What does that mean? Like someone came, like
okay,
a big...
so recapitalization means, like, typically in a recapitalization effort, a company will come in and give you more capital to grow your fund, or boost employment, or maybe enhance employment, enhance office space. Even give you enough capital, kind of almost like an angel fund investor, right? But it's not that way. You have a proven track record. You have capital, and I've watched many of your videos in the past, and podcasts in the past, where you talk to people and you talk to angel investors and or talked about how to grow within purchasing businesses or how to invest. These groups look at past track record. You're audited, you're vetted by Ernst & Young, one of the big four. And these big private equity firms have a lot of clout, so they're not just going to invest in somebody. What they're doing is they're coming in, they're saying, okay, we're going to give you X amount of dollars to reinvest into your company, to boost your company's infrastructure and employment so that we can make you bigger. And we're going to bring you also advice and consultants and everything X, Y, Z to take you to the next level. And right, that's the two different separations. But recapitalization is taking the value of your portfolio, giving you money based on that value, and then also joining along with you with additional capital to grow.
So in the world of let's use easy math. So like, let's say you have $100 million fund, or it's valued at $100 million, and some big, private equity firm comes in and they say, hey, we need you to get audited by Ernst & Young, or maybe you already have. We want to give you $20 million, and we're going to be, a 1/6 owner, or could be more, could be less.
We're going to own a board share. Yep.
And then we're going to basically it's kind of like an injection of capital where you use that just like a startup would to like build software, improve, and help you grow a lot faster. So that's the event that happened in your world. Then what happened?
Yeah, and then after that, so I mean, I had in a short, probably call it a 36-month period. I had run my wick, my energy wick, in terms of working so far thin that the candle, like I literally was done. And I had taken the advantage of all the experience and everything that I learned, and did some traveling. And after my travels and during the travels, I kind of sat around and thought to myself, there's an underserved component of this market. And I know from talking to our acquisitions department and learning about all these different assets that sat across the country, owned by mom and pops, that we were pursuing, but maybe we're too small. But there are individual investors that were pursuing these assets and willing to make their investments individually into these things, not buying 5 of them, just one to experience the cash flow. And that was extremely underserved. And I thought to myself, after looking at my database and using all my analytics and business intelligence models and everything that I put together over time, I was like, nobody else has access to this. And all these lenders know me. They've talked to me. I can talk to these investors on a small imbalance ratio, like a small balance element, and give them guidance. And instead of being a mortgage broker that connected them to the lenders, I became their investment advisor or investment partner. And that's when I started Cloverleaf. And Cloverleaf started in 2019, in between now and, called the previous fund and CFO experience or my role. Started Cloverleaf. And in the midst of that, met up with a couple other partners in the firm now, which is Haven Capital Ventures. They wanted me to join them and kind of take my expertise in the previous funds and start a whole new one, right? And I guess my biggest thing, and probably the shortest answer to your question, is I wanted to put my own thumbprint on mobile home community investment with funds. Syndications, stuff like that. Where I can bring advanced analytics and advanced intelligence and real-time dynamic analytics, it hasn't been done before. So I have the expertise with previous funds, large funds, but the analytical basis, like to modernize it.
Do you? Does that mean you're going after smaller portfolios than kind of maybe at the firm you were previously?
Yeah, for sure. We're investing in and looking at. We still have a criteria, right? Our buy box of investments, and I'm sure you've heard that in the past with all like your past contributors and guests on the forum. And I love that term. It's something that I haven't heard probably in about 12 months. I forgot about it, but I heard it recently in talking to a kind of a residential investor down in Texas. But a buy box tells me that we want to invest in this minimal amount, but it has to hit this per lot cash flow, right? And has the capability to do this, but even more if we add lot.
So what are those criteria for you, and how are those criteria different than where you were before, right? So the thought that comes to mind is like, hey, you just left. You have an incredible experience, right? Like you've done all these different firms. And then you've now started your own firm. And the thing that comes to mind is he just doing the same thing and now he's competing against his bigger firm that has different resources and more resources? Or is he targeting a different part of the niche? Because I know, for example, like institutions only buy something that, is at least $5 million or $10 million. Yeah. And you might play in underneath that space. So walk me through, like, what was the acquisition criteria before, and how has that changed now to what you're doing?
Sure. So the acquisition criteria before was always to be in a platform where you would buy at a 7 cap on the market. Okay, we'll walk our way down, and I use this very often in terms of my conversations with investors and also on the podcast. We're all familiar with 50,000 foot view, 25,000 foot view, and then down to the 10, right? So 50,000 foot view was we want to purchase something that's on the market for a current 6 cap, 7 cap.
Okay. So a 7 cap means it's producing $7,000 of net income, or just top
net
revenue.
Operating income. Yep.
Okay. Net operating income. So net income of the property for every $100,000 you've invested. Okay.
Exactly.
Keep going.
So we would purchase them at a 7 cap on the market, but applying our strategies, creating efficiencies in the expenses, and then boosting rents in year 2. Not sitting there looking at a 5-year forecast, but in year 2, we're purchasing this at our 13 cap. Make sense?
So you're taking something that produces $7,000 a year in net income, and then your goal is to improve it enough to the point where it's generating $13,000 per 100K invested.
By year 2, by 2.5, year 2.5.
Got it. Okay, how do you do that? Like, what's your consistent blueprint approach to going in? Like, you only buy a property that's in XYZ shape, or
Yeah, there's certain factors and standards, and then I think that's where a lot of we don't want to jump down the rabbit hole about what it takes to get there, because we'd be here for 2 days. This would be the longest podcast.
Yeah, that's where the gold is, man. I want to hear all the learning. Like that's what makes this interesting, right? It's like, why is your criteria the way it is? You learn all these nuggets and tidbits by understanding those stories. Yeah,
well, I mean, basically it starts with expenses, right? You could look at something that's in the market at say $50 to $100 below their competition. But don't immediately jump into increasing the rents, creating dissension in the community, and then also dissension in the locality where you're trying to push these tenants out that we already have the most affordable option for these tenants in each individual geography. But the first thing you could do, and it comes with experience, and again, I learned from some of the greats, and I'm so blessed to have learned from them. But I mean, I could see a utility expense and tell you per lot basis in a given region, and the advanced analytics that I've learned over time using discussions with appraisers, everything. I mean, there's some things that are on black and white within an Excel spreadsheet, and then there's some things, as you know, as an investor as well, that you just see, right? But I mean, you could go in and you could see the per lot basis based on other communities in the region that you could cut down utility expenses because there's a leak. And if you remedy that leak, you're cutting expenses, which is one of the top 4 in mobile home communities: water usage, sewer, right? You cut that down by 25%, you've already increased your NOI by 25%, creating efficiencies. That community as well, and again, we're just talking about a microcosm, but that community as well, tenants the community's paying for these utility expenses, and the tenants are the ones consuming it. So you create efficiency by reducing the leaks, and you literally have redone the infrastructure, created efficiencies there, and you say, oh, by the way, tenant, in what residential arena does the tenant not pay for their consumption of water? Think about apartments, think about homes. I mean, you just sit there for free and use how much ever water you want. So you bill back $10 a month. So you're going in and you're going into a property, you're looking at the utilities, and you're one thing you're looking for is does the owner lease back utilities? If not, that's a great way to increase NOI. But what are other things that you do? You said you go in, and it was very surface level answer. Like, give me some details, give me the meat. You go into a property, and what's your what are the 10 things you look at? I think number one thing you look at is what's the competition doing around you? Okay, say there are 5. You want typically 5 mobile home communities around you. Okay, if you're one individual within a rural market, you control the market, and therefore charging rents and doing anything you do is not going to add value. But if you have 4 others in the market, 5 total, a minimum 5 within. Whether it's a rural market or a sub-metro market, you want the 5 around you. If one of those 5 or all 4 of those 5 are 90% occupied, and they're charging $75 more in lot rent, okay, and they have better amenities. Hello, I mean, that's number one. Go into this community, pave the streets with the new ways of how to pave that are acceptable from Fannie and Freddie and all these conventional banking atmospheres. So you could say, look, everybody else around us, why is that? That they're at 90 to 95% occupied, we're at 60%, and we're $75 cheaper. Number one. Number two, look at the expenses. Go in, how can we create efficiencies? Again, give back to the community and the tenants first. What can we do to give back to the tenants? We don't want to lose tenants. It costs more to get rid of tenants and create evictions than it does to maintain them. So you want to maintain them. You want to create more value. You want to create more community. So go in, pave the roads, provide solar lamps, create, even as far as creating a playground, a sense of community. I keep pushing that, right? After that, then you start to really engineer into the property. If we want to start boosting rents, what keeps us below the other four? Remember, we talked about five in the region. What are the other four offering? We're already $75 below them. Let's only bump it up $10. And then when you approach your tenants about bumping the rents, plus also passing through utilities, right, getting back some of the infrastructure improvement that you've done. This is an investment, for God's sakes, at the end of the day, right? But you say, look, everybody else around us is $75 at minimum higher than what we're offering. We're just bumping the rent $10, and then we're also charging another $10 for the utilities that you've been using for 5 years. It's not obscene. And we're going to and these vacant lots that are sitting around us, we're going to bring in some brand new homes. You have an opportunity to buy one of those homes, and we'll buy that home from your current used home from you. We'll bring in a new one. You can buy that one. We'll give you a whole payment plan, right? And that's, again, jumping down the rabbit hole. But then we brought a brand new home in. We've given this tenant an opportunity to own a brand new home. We're going to buy their used home from them and then bring another tenant in, increase occupancy.
I dig it. Okay, I'm starting to get a better picture for exactly like what you're doing. I'm trying to picture these things in my mind, right? Like if I'm an investor looking at your deal, I want to know what's the secret sauce, right? Like what do you guys do that go in? What's your blueprint? How did you get into this asset class? Like why mobile home parks for you versus all the other different types of investing? Yeah,
development. Honestly, it fell upon me. My past mentor reached out to me, and it's Dave Reynolds, and he's one of the gurus in the sector itself. And I totally appreciate everything that he taught me, and Frank Rolfe, and I mentioned other names that are big in the sector. But it fell upon me. I was out there seeking a position after developing apartment buildings, and I drove out to Western Colorado, 4 hours from Denver, which we just had like prior to the podcast. We talked about this, but it was a 4-hour drive one way. I drove out there and just like the personality of him and started to learn about mobile home communities that I only had touched a fractional amount of in my commercial real estate history, but it started to make sense, and then I was addicted. I was in everything about it. I was like, and then plus everybody was doing these things old school, like the old school way of underwriting any type of real estate, residential, single family up to commercial. And then with my analytical background, I started to tap into the ways to create machine learning, algorithms, all this stuff behind it. And so here I am today.
Maybe let's frame this where, look, you're obviously in this asset class and totally bought in. Walk us through, like, why do you think this is such a good asset class to invest in? Why should I, if we target people who maybe have done less than 10 LP investing deals, and they're, sitting there trying to figure out, do I invest in a debt fund? Do I invest in, I'm trying to get consistent cash flow. Obviously I want to save, protect my wealth that I've built, but I'm trying to figure out how to invest it. Like why, sell us on like why you love mobile home parks so much, and why it might be a good choice for someone that's going along this path as one of their first deals.
Right. And I think that's a great point. This is the only asset class, even behind what they would consider in today's market true affordable housing or Section 8, right? This is the only asset class spread across all commercial real estate, which it is. This is multifamily. We've gone through the analogy and the depictive of it, but it's the only one that's been resilient and has stood above the rest of the major food groups within commercial real estate. It's the only one that was resilient through recession, right, in 2007, 2008. It maintained that same number one or number two basis in NOI growth all of the years, and then even accelerated so much past the rest of the food groups, the commercial real estate food groups in COVID. It jumped above everything. And so, I mean, it's, for me, I love the consistency, the reliability. When you talk about getting cash on cash returns, IRRs in terms of your investment, over the term of your investment, all you want to know is something that's consistent. It's not a shot in the dark, right? And I have felt over time that each one of the commercial real estate classes and asset classes are kind of riding that cycle. What's happening with inflation? What's happening with rental markets? Are there too many units in the market when it comes to multifamily? We're looking today, and I just had a conversation in a podcast earlier today discussing about office buildings with all the office space that's now vacant, and what are they going to do? That belongs to things like self-storage, which is on the boom now. That belongs to office. That belongs to retail. That belongs to residential apartments. But one thing that has stayed stable through all of it is mobile home communities. It's the most affordable, the most effective affordable. And now you have government initiatives pushing more and more, counties, states pushing more and more to develop initiatives around mobile home communities, even to the level that, and I was part of this firm, the previous fund that helped develop the policies for Fannie and Freddie. Again, sitting here in DC, looking at the Capitol building, thinking, okay, I remember that I played a role in this.
I think one of the things that I think about when I look at mobile home parks is when you're going into a recessionary environment. You know, this is very much a time when, you know, things are unclear what's going to happen. And, you know, I would argue that if everyone thinks a looming recession is happening, the worst thing you could be doing is investing in luxury Class A apartment buildings or into Airbnb, you know, short-term rentals or anything like that. Like the thinking being, if you're going to invest, like people, if we go into a recession, people aren't going to be like going on vacations as much. They're not, you know, and
the
so
pocketbook gets tighter.
Right. And so on the other side of the spectrum, I think, you know, I've been a huge co-living guy. I love buying single family homes, renting them by the room. And I kind of think of that as very similar to this. It's a totally different product, but you know, when recessionary times are ahead, I would want to be in an asset class that grows in demand. Which, you know, if people are, you know, being tighter on their pocketbooks, then they're not going to want to spend as much money in rent. And so everything actually compresses down to what I think is this bottom part of mobile home parks. So would you say similarly?
Oh, yeah, I would definitely say so. And I think I used the analogy earlier when it comes to the times to invest. And one of the big things that I pointed out with using the analytics and a lot of the data that I gained over time. I mean, I had spoken to our PR firm out of California, and they looked at one of the database and the data resource of hyperlinks and links to websites and data over time, and just watching the trajectory of mobile home communities. I mean, right now is the time to be investing in this because there are so many people flooding equity. All your big private equity firms, the groups that I hear now, it's tripled, quadrupled, quintupled since when I first got involved, and that's only since 2015. right? Private equity they caught on. Warren Buffett's he's a brilliant guy. He kind of knows what he's doing, right? And so everybody else jumped onto that. Investing into mobile home communities has become mainstream. Erasing the stigma is the other thing too. But I mean, with the solidarity that you can make with mobile home communities, you're talking about recession, you're talking about inflation, you're talking about one of the things that America has always had a shortage of is affordable housing. And I've described it, hopefully I've started to convey the image of where mobile home communities actually put themselves in today's market for residential. It's not a trailer park. That's the days of the past. The misconception, the misunderstood elements that it's not just trailer park like the 70s or 80s. We're developing it into communities, and big private equity and groups like ourselves that are raising funds and pushing the image of a community is the way to go. And if it remains resilient through a recession, COVID, a global pandemic, everything, and you don't raise the rents, you only just bump them up, and it's still the most affordable option in a shortage of affordable housing. I mean, to answer your question, it's everything I just said in the past 5 to 7 statements.
I'm very much bought into why now. I think this asset class, maybe more than ever, is interesting. How can a mobile home park operator screw up a deal? Like, what are the risks? If I'm looking at investing in your firm or any firm that does mobile home park communities, like, what are the red flags that I should be looking for? And like, what is like interest rates rising as a risk, and that, like, walk us through all that.
Sure. There's the top 3, right? Number 1, getting into like saying that, I've owned apartment buildings and I could totally do this. It's not the same thing. I described lot, home, 2 different operations, right? And this operation is truly a difference maker. But let's just focus on this. A multifamily, sticks and bricks, walls, right? It's completely different. And how you operate it, the infrastructure, you're talking about 1980s to maybe 90s infrastructure that you have to monitor, manage, keep track of, and try to modernize, right? So the number one thing is people thinking, oh, I'm buying this at a multifamily, with a multifamily perspective, an apartment perspective, and you have no idea what you're getting into. Number one way to screw it up. Number 2, going into these things, and like I told you about, always get into a region or a market where there's 4 others, right? Going in and seeing that the others are charging $325 and you're at $175, and you go into the community and you go, $175, I should be at $325. You make those, you charge those tenants that rate. All of a sudden, you have all the tenants pushing to have lawsuits. There are all kinds of attorneys and law firms around the country just seeking, kind of like ambulance chasing, right? Waiting for somebody to say, we're coalitioning to go against our owner who's pushed our rents beyond affordable. And so now none of them are paying. So you went from 175, charged them to 325 in the rest of the communities without giving anything back to the tenants. And now nobody's paying. That's number 2. The number 3 way to mess this up is get too many too quick. And buy one in California, buy one in Wisconsin, buy one in New York, and buy one in Florida. Not the same markets. Cap rates fluctuate, and the trend or traction of the market and how it's being marketed in today's atmosphere, which is a lot of them are overpriced, but you're buying all of them because you have that free capital and you don't know how to operate any of them. Make sense?
So you've just mentioned that with Haven Capital Partners, do you guys invest all across with the U.S.? How do you view your strategy as different?
Yeah. How do ours different? How are we?
Yeah, you just made the argument you shouldn't be investing with an operator that's got different properties all spanned across the United States.
Investing too fast. Okay, so you want to do smart. You want to be part of, and you want to invest individually or with somebody that has obviously expertise. I guess probably one of the underlying statements with what your example you just provided is somebody that maybe is just getting in. Who's gonna buy 5 communities in the markets I just told you about?
Brad, let me frame it this way. You've raised $2.2 million and you're in your second fund with Haven Capital Ventures. And you said that you're buying homes all across the U.S.
Buying
communities. And you just said one of the 3 risks is working with an operator that has properties all across the U.S. So I'm asking, like, you just said that's a risk. So, like, walk me through why is that your strategy?
Yeah. So one of the things, like I said, one of the underlying things that I did not point out or kind of overlay in that statement is somebody that understands the value of mobile home communities and buys at any price point, okay? Versus having experience and being able to assess and analyze the market, and then also understand that in queue behind the other 2 that you have bought. So say the one I told you, I use the analogy of California. It's very hard to buy in California. So buying at a 3% cap rate, how are you going to return to your investors unless it makes sense? Buying in Wisconsin is a whole different platform. Why would you buy in California then Wisconsin? 2 different markets. You have to know the Wisconsin market as well. Why would you buy that additional property in upstate New York? Again, now you're starting to see somebody that's inexperienced and doesn't know what's going on.
So I think we're missing a point here. So here's the way I think about it, right? It's like, okay, you can either invest in a firm that's like, hey, we invest in the Southeast region, or hey, we invest in, we only invest in Florida or Jacksonville or whatever, and in theory, like, you would assume that operator knows that market really well. You are on your second fund with 2.2 million under
17th in total.
17th in total, but this is a new firm. You've started a new firm, right? And so, someone that's listening and that might want to, that's trying to understand how you think, that wants to understand about your firm a little bit more, about your strategy. Why are you buying all around the U.S.?
Okay, prime example. So when you look at a certain market, okay, and you find an acquisition opportunity, you're not just going to put pin drops all over the U.S. just because you're getting them at a good rate, right? You could stumble upon a mom and pop and off-market deal, but what you're also doing, using analytics, right, using a strategic and intelligent approach, you want to buy. Remember, we talked about having 5 competitors in the market. You don't want to be the only one. You want 4 others. Well, you're also talking to the owner of this one and the owner of this one, so that you have 3. End up buying 3 within the 5, and then now you control your expenses. Instead of having a 5% management expense across this one, you can spread it across the 3 because you have one community manager.
So what you do is you go and you identify a mom and pop operator, and then you go try and buy the additional communities around it.
Yep. And so you can control an expense bubble.
Is that a requirement as part of your acquisition process, or do you?
1,000%. When I put an offer, an LOI down on one property, I'm already looking at the other 2.
Interesting. Okay. See, this is when I'm asking you about what your acquisition criteria is and what makes Haven Capital Ventures different. You should be saying that. Here's something that we do that I don't think anyone else does. We go and we find mom and pop operators across the United States, and then we go and we buy the existing portfolios around that. That's a totally unique strategy that you're leaving out. What are you doing?
I leave it out because I forget the fact that, and I do this all the time, Pascal. I do it all the time where I sit there and I'll talk about a specific thing, and I feel like everybody else that I'm talking to knows exactly what's happening over here.
Yeah,
I'm talking about what's going on right here.
Yeah, no, I get that. Well, cool, man. I appreciated this conversation. I think I love what you're doing. Yeah, man. And I hope all continues well. Where can people go find out and learn more about Haven Capital Ventures?
Sure. So at any time, obviously, give me a call on my mobile phone. And I don't reject calls. I don't filter calls. Give me a call on my mobile phone, 303-525-4850. Our office number is on our website, havencapitalventures.com. And then you can reach me via email at bradley.rymer, L-E-Y, bradley.rymer at havencapitalventures.com.
Sweet. And we'll include all of that in the show notes. Other than that, thank you for coming on the show, Brad.
No, thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity. I'm glad I reached out. I'm glad we connected again, and I hope all is well with you, and look forward to the next opportunity.
Thanks, man.
Yep. Thanks, Pascal.